Welcome to this forum. I'm Bonnie Pan. I'm delighted to be the moderator for this afternoon's discussion. We have two distinguished guests. Let me introduce their bio for a minute. Frances Moore, I think some of you know her and her achievement in this area for more than 20 years. Okay. Frances Moore is the Chief Executive Officer of IFPI, and she was previous Executive Vice President of IFPI and the Regional Director in Europe. She has worked for more than 20 years in government relations and public affairs representing European and the U.S. companies. Followed by Frances' presentation. The second presenter, Ms. Alice Jacob. He works in the communication team at IFPI, the organization that represents the recording industry worldwide. He helps produce his flagship publication, including the Digital Music Report, investing in music and the recording industry in numbers. That's very good name, investing. I saw the money, dollar sign coming out. Okay, and he will discuss education and communication programs in this field. So let's welcome Frances first.
Hi, let's see if this works. Can you hear me well? Yeah, okay. First of all, the only Chinese word I know is ni hao. So, ni hao. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much to the GMA for inviting me to this event. I'm really happy to be here on the 25th anniversary. So thank you. And thank you also to our organization in Taiwan, RIT, for making sure that we're part of it. It really is a pleasure for me to be back in Taiwan. This is one of the most dynamic and exciting cities in Asia, and it's really a creative musical hub for this whole Asian region. Now, I've been asked to speak for 75 minutes, and to be quite honest, I can't speak for 75 minutes in any language. And I don't think it would be fair either on the interpreters to have to translate my Scottish accent for the next 75 minutes. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to speak for 15 minutes, and then afterwards I'm going to pass over to my colleague Alex Jacobs, who's going to talk to you about IFPI's communication campaigns. Why communication campaigns? Because in all the work we do, there is one really, really important element, which is education. Educating the consumer that music matters, that copyright is an important and valuable part of the economy. And so that's why I want Alex to be able to speak to you after I've finished. Now, excuse me if at any point I start to speak too quickly, just give me a signal and I'll slow down. So, I've been asked to speak to you about the state of the global recorded music industry, the latest developments and trends that we're seeing today, and the opportunities and challenges for the music industry for tomorrow. And also, what we have to do to achieve sustained future growth. And so I'll take each of those in turn. First of all, let me start with the state of the global music industry. As Professor Pronger already mentioned, I have worked with the music industry for something like 20 years. And I can say that it's always been a dynamic industry. But I can't think of a more exciting time in the global development than right now, and I'll explain why. We've all talked for years of the digital development, the digital revolution, but in fact it shows no signs of ending. Normally a revolution comes to an end, and there is no sign of this revolution ending. In fact, if anything, it seems to be accelerating, and that's one of the messages for today. 10 years ago, the download was the new format. Everyone had the Apple download, and it was really the format that everybody was getting excited about. Today, The focus is on the rapid growth of the streaming and subscription model. Today, the record companies are no longer, and the business is no longer dependent on one particular model. If you think of the 80s, particularly in Europe and the US, there was one main format, which was the CD. But now we've transformed into what I would call a portfolio business. Instead of, as I say, one model, it's an industry of many business models. As consumers move away from the need to own something, whether it be an album or a single, to wanting to access. And now they can access vast catalogues of music. So as a result, consumers have had, around the world, access to more music and more exciting ways to get to that music than ever before. Partly because of that, the global recording industry saw growth for the first time in 13 years in 2012. So think back, right back to 1990 something. From then onwards, the industry was in a real state of decline. And if you read the newspapers, they talked, would the music industry survive? Well, in 2012, we saw the first small growth. And in 2013, we've continued that growth in most areas. Europe, Latin America, North America. To be honest, it's only the sharp fall in revenues in Japan, and when I mean sharp, I'm talking of 17% declines, that meant that the global market overall was in decline. And I'll come back to Japan a little later. Outside of Japan, the world was essentially flat. So a question of stabilization at a global level. Not many industries would celebrate stabilization. They'd be looking for growth. But after so many years of decline, stabilization is good news. So we're optimistic, but it's an optimism that is tempered by realism. We're still an industry which is in transition. Our global recovery is very fragile. As I say, for 2013, essentially flat. So our road to recovery isn't going to be short, it's not going to be straight, and it's not going to be simple. But we do believe that we are on the road to recovery. So, what are the main drivers moving our industry forward today? First, the fact that our companies are fully committed to licensing. Record companies globally have licensed something like 37 million tracks to 400 services around the world. We've created a world of choice and competition on a global scale. And what we're finding is that consumers are using these services in ever-increasing numbers. Just a few years ago, the major international music services were in a handful of countries. Today, Deezer, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube are in more than 150 countries. And of course, we shouldn't forget the local players, such as your own Taiwan's KikiBox. The market will continue to evolve. At a global level, we're watching closely for the impact of Apple's purchase of the subscription service Beats. We're watching for YouTube's plans to launch a premium subscription offering. These technology giants are reacting to consumers' demand for access to music by going into the subscription market. And that's good news, obviously, for the music business. The spread of digital services is an amazing opportunity for record companies. We have the ability now to reach fans worldwide. And in particular, we can reach emerging markets that had a weak physical retail infrastructure and were dominated by piracy. Markets, for example, like some of the Latin American markets or like Africa. Of course, there are some people who say that record companies don't have a role in the globalized digital world where artists can go directly on the internet to the fans. I don't agree with that. Record companies bring the investment and expertise in nurturing and promoting artists. They invest more than $4.5 billion each year in artists and repertoire. They have a role in funding, marketing, promoting, and this is very, very important, and even more important, I think, in the digital world. That's why I think that the record companies will remain at the heart of the global revolution. They're working with partners, as I mentioned, to advance the industry in different ways, from region to region and from country to country. If I just look at some of the regions. In Europe, we have seen the rapid rise of streaming in some markets. In Sweden, subscription services accounted for 94% of the digital market last year. There are similar pictures in some of the other Nordic countries. And these services have helped the digital market overtake physical sales in those countries and to drive overall growth. But there is no uniform picture in Europe. In fact, there is no uniform picture in the world. In Europe, for example, some of the largest markets, like France and Germany, still see the majority of their revenues coming from physical sales. We think ultimately these markets will go in the same direction as Sweden. But it's going to take time, and we're going to have to continue to work with our partners, such as Spotify and Deezer, etc., to get there. In the US, which is the single largest music market, we're seeing a different pattern again. Download sales, which took off there earlier than in most markets, are starting to fall. Yet subscription and streaming services are seeing revenues increase. So overall, the market is fairly stable. Record companies are redoubling their efforts to ensure American consumers are getting access to music when, where, and how they want it. They have really delivered innovative deals in emerging economies that are helping monetize the mass market for music. If I take Latin America, for example, the consumer who has less earning power can enjoy music services bundled with their mobile telephone services. So, for example, you see deals like Telefonica and Napster, TIM and Move Music, and Tigo and Deezer. Again, markets that were difficult for the music industry in the past because of the lack of physical infrastructure are becoming accessible. In Africa, record companies are setting up offices. Until now, record companies tended to be in South Africa and not many other African countries. But they're setting up offices and they're partnering with local companies and signing local artists. We believe that market offers enormous potential over the medium term, as services such as the Click, which is a prepaid streaming service offered on Android, Samsung phones, designed specially for Africa, are being rolled out in that territory. And then I come to Asia, a different story again. Within Asia, we have seen markets adapt to the digital revolution in different ways. Many markets, and I was talking to our colleagues in Malaysia yesterday, many markets jumped the download model and went straight into streaming. Let me give you a few examples. South Korea is best known for the success of local repertoire and K-pop. But robust copyright enforcement over a period of years has also made a real difference. A series of copyright reforms going back to 2007 has helped enable strong growth in the market. South Korea's digital music market is distinct in other ways too. It's dominated by subscription services, which have also helped drive overall growth. And last year, it became one of the top 10 global recorded music markets for the first time. And that was a major jump from somewhere in the 20s up to be a top 10 market. it just shows you what the potential is of the Asian markets. I mentioned Japan earlier, and I want to come back to Japan because it tells a different story again. It's one of a market which is in challenging transition. The overall recorded music market dropped by almost 17% last year, as I mentioned, as Japan is the second biggest market in the world for the music industry. This drove overall global revenues downwards, and we ended up basically flat. The problem with Japan is that the first generation of digital music services, personalized mobile products such as ringtones and ringback tones, performed very well in Japan. But these services are now in decline. And the second generation of downloads and streaming have been slower to take off than in other markets. The good news is that those services are now opening up in Japan. There's still many challenges to come, but I believe in the medium term, the outlook is bright. But it gives you an idea of that bumpy road that I mentioned, the fact that our recovery won't be a straight road and simple. Let me mention China. And again, I'm doing a very quick tour of the world, so excuse me. China is a different picture again, a market of enormous potential, but stifled by piracy. The landscape is beginning to change. Over the last 2 years, record companies have licensed 8 of China's major online services. And most of these services were actually previously infringing. Now we're looking at how to bring the paid model to China. Some of you were at the Music Matters conference in Singapore, and you would have heard Max Hole, the international head of the world's largest record company, Universal, mention that the situation in China was really a fascinating one. To quote him, he said, "China is not only the world's largest country, it's also the world's biggest experiment in testing the new business models of the future." So let me turn to Taiwan. Taiwan remains a dynamic, creative hub for the industry in Asia. The development of local services, such as KKBox, is proving a growing platform for local repertoire. And the continued development of the mainland China market offers an unrivaled opportunity for Taiwanese artists to reach a larger audience for their music. We also hope that Taiwan capitalizes on its position to become one of the music cities we are promoting around the world. It's in a very good position to be a music city, but I leave my colleague to go into that further. This is not to say that Taiwan's music market is realizing its full potential. More needs to be done, and I'll come back to that shortly. As I've said, licensing music across all digital channels and formats is at the heart of our global strategy. And another key theme is the theme of diversification. Our transformation to a portfolio business is reflected in the diversification of our revenue streams. The recording industry's 3 fastest growing sources of revenue in 2013 were subscription services, performance rights income, and advertising supported revenue. Performance rights income increased by 19% globally in 2013, and it now accounts for 7% of our global revenues. Now, just a few years ago, this is a revenue stream that was small and considered secondary to CD sales and to digital downloads. Today, performance rights is a mainstream part of our portfolio business. It's just one of the areas where our industry depends critically on the rights we need to do business. And at IFPI, one of our major priorities is to campaign for performance rights in countries where they're absent. Singapore has recently introduced full performance rights, China is hopefully going to introduce them in the near future. And Chinese record companies see this as a big potential step forward. Of course, where performance rights do exist, there are other challenges. Businesses such as hotels, bars, karaokes use music to their commercial benefit, and they should be paying a fair price. The royalties they pay are what sustain the artists and the producers. So I've given a snapshot of some of the key developments in our global industry. How it's licensing, how it's diversifying, how it's transitioning to the new digital world. To sustain this success, we need a fair environment that respects and safeguards the rights on which we depend. And let me highlight two particular areas of IFPI's work. First, the role of copyright. And there is a political debate going on in many countries about the role of copyright in the digital world. Some opponents have described it as a barrier to innovation. The debate takes different forms in different countries, but the common thread is the erosion of copyright, which has enabled so much investment in creative content. We're not an industry which is afraid. We don't fear initiatives to make copyright law work better. If it's change that helps promote creative industries, then change is good. What we do oppose is changes that weaken copyright. If policymakers are to review copyright, then they should find evidence that there is a problem first, and then only then look to fix it. They should avoid weakening copyright law. Instead, they should focus on making it work better in practice and ensuring it is properly enforced. The industry globally continues to face a grave threat from piracy. Our research has found that 1 in 4 internet users worldwide regularly use unlicensed sites. And I'm told that the figure for Taiwan is even higher. That's a measure of the threat that we're facing, but it's also a measure of the revenue, the income that we're missing. And that revenue would help us to sustain the growth and move forward from being a flat industry. Here in Taiwan, digital piracy remains a significant problem. Most of the infringing content being accessed here is hosted by illegal websites overseas. Such pirate sites offer unfair competition for the 16 licensed services in Taiwan, services like KKBox. It's just plain unfair competition that they have to compete with those illegal sites based outside of Taiwan. So as I say, piracy remains a grave threat to the industry. There is no magic bullet solution, but we believe a holistic approach is the best way forward. And for that, we look for cooperation from the key players who influence consumer behaviour in the digital world. Internet service providers have access to vast consumer audiences. They can take appropriate steps to help protect creators' rights. And we're discussing that around the world. It's often mentioned that any actions of this sort would interfere with fundamental freedoms. I think one of the things we should remember is that copyright itself is a fundamental freedom, and that nothing that we've suggested anywhere in the world interferes with freedom of expression or freedom of life. It would not be our policy to suggest that. If I give you an example, we have 17 countries already which are blocking access to websites dedicated to copyright infringement. I can tell you, although I won't go into detail because I know you already had a website blocking forum, that it's effective and it does not interfere with freedom of speech. So to close, after more than a decade of decline, we're stabilising. But recovery remains fragile and the path is not smooth. The industry has embraced the digital world and licensed its repertoire globally. It's diversified across different revenue streams to create a portfolio business. Performance rights and streaming are two of the increasing important areas in our revenue mix. Both have growth potential, which is huge, and particularly here in Asia. And finally, two global issues will help shape our industry environment in the coming years: the debate over copyright and the continuing fight against piracy. I'm going to stop there because reading a text and having it translated, I can imagine it's fairly laborious for the listener, and that wasn't 75 minutes. But we'll return to some of the issues raised in the question and answer session. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. I like the concept of music city. I think that is fantastic. And also copyright is always a big problem. So probably Alice will follow discussing copyright and how to educate consumers to pay. There's nothing free in this world. Okay. So the second presenter, Alice Jacob. So it's your turn.
Thank you very much. My name's Alex Jacob. I work in the communications team at IFPI. And just to say at the start of this presentation, whenever I raise my hand like this, I'm not asking myself or anyone a question. I'm just asking the team at the back there to move the slides on for me. So let's start by doing that. Just a few words about IFPI for those who are perhaps not so familiar with the organisation. We represent the recorded music industry worldwide, and as you see there, our three aims stated are to promote the value of recorded music, to campaign for the rights of record producers, and to expand the commercial uses of recorded music. Now that can take many different forms in different places. It can mean campaigning for performance rights in China or Singapore. It can mean working with our companies, our member companies, to take on for organizations like vKontakte, Russia's Facebook, that runs a large illegal music service. It can mean working with performers and songwriters and music publishers in Brazil to ensure that the copyright law there is fit for purpose in the digital age. All of these different things that we do involve communications and education. It's vital that we reach out there to policymakers, to consumers, to people within the industry, and explain what we are doing. Explain, explain, explain is our mantra at IFPI. I say we represent the recorded music industry. We have 1,300 members in total, the 3 international major companies, but also hundreds of independent record labels, and we represent them all. We are the hub of a global network. We have 55 affiliated national groups or music licensing companies around the world. And in many of the education programs and communication programs that I'm about to talk to you about are implemented locally through those organizations and tailored for local audiences. And of course, we ourselves have a global footprint with offices from Hong Kong to Miami, and our teams there in those regional offices also constantly adapt and tailor the material that we put out and campaign to local policymakers, media, and others. So we undertake a wide range of campaigns, but perhaps they broadly fit into 3 categories. Promoting the licensed music business that Francis was just talking about, promoting the investment made by record companies, large and small, in artists and music, and promoting consumer awareness of IP rights. As the professor said, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and we need to explain to people why copyright is the basis for investment in music and helps deliver the music they love. Going first then to promoting the licensed music business. Our main resource for this is a website called pro-music.org. It is the world's most comprehensive list of licensed digital music services. Download stores, subscription offerings, free advertising supported streaming services. The whole variety. And consumers can go onto it wherever they are in the world, locate their country or territory, and then find the list of services in that country. Again, broken down by all those different types of service, because we know different types of consumers want to use different types of music service. And so this is a comprehensive list. It's also used by us when we go in to see policymakers who say, you can't get music legally online. Well, now, as Francis said, in virtually every country in the world, there are a healthy number of music services, different types of music services, including ones that do offer music for free to consumers, albeit supported by advertising. We also promote the license market through our digital music report. We've been producing this now for 10 years. It is a comprehensive guide to the evolution of the digital music market, the things that record companies are doing to license as many different types of service as possible. It also talks, frankly, about the barriers to the growth of that digital market, the problems that we face with piracy, but also what we as an industry are doing to overcome them, and the work that we are doing with partners, whether that's credit card companies who are pulling their services from illegal sites, whether that's advertisers who are increasingly ensuring that their advertising does not appear on pirate sites, whether that's law enforcement worldwide who are taking action against illegal businesses. We have never really stood still in the face of the piracy threat. And although piracy is still a problem for the industry, Francis mentioned the figure of 1 in 4 internet users worldwide using unlicensed sites. We believe that if we had not conducted this campaign across all these fronts, the problem would be worse. So we think we've made some progress, but clearly there's a lot more to do. And the Digital Music Report sets that out very, very clearly. I think the 3 takeaway messages really from the Digital Music Report that we published this year are, as Francis said, that the industry is on the road to recovery. It has worked and transformed its business models, licensed services around the world, and that is leading to renewed growth in many markets. And also, as Francis said, that we have become a portfolio business. We've gone from selling one product to selling dozens. Each time a new release is put together now for an artist, the record company has to work on a whole variety of different products and services, ways of getting that music to the public. And that's not counting the areas of performance rights, of sync, that are so increasingly important to the industry. And to reflect this new diverse world, this year, for the first time, IFPI produced its Global Recorded Artists Chart. And this puts together the success of individual artists across CD sales, download sales, and on-demand streaming. Blends them together for the first time on a global basis. And as you see there, the first winners of the award were the boy band One Direction. And it was keenly thought. They just beat Eminem to top the chart. And we look to see who wins this year. But it was an interesting way of showing to the outside world that the music industry is more than just sales. It is access models. It is subscription and streaming services. They are the mainstream of the music industry these days. I mentioned our second area of education and communications is about the work that record companies do to invest in artists and music. both in terms of the skills and expertise and the financial outlay. And we tackle this through our Investing in Music report. And we produced 2 so far. Another is coming this October, so look out for it. From the last Investing in Music report, we talked really about the financial outlay that record companies make. As Francis mentioned, $4.5 billion US dollars a year in A&R and marketing alone. That is a hefty investment that is not matched by any other player in the music market in terms of upfront investment in finding, discovering, nurturing artists. There are around 5,000 artists on the rosters of the major record companies alone, tens of thousands more artists, of course, on the rosters of independent labels. And 1 in 4 of these artists is a new signing, signed in the last 12 months. And it remains the case that new music, new artists, is the lifeblood of the recording industry. Of course, people in the A&R departments go to work each morning hoping to discover the new big thing. Interestingly, only an estimated 1 in 5 of those artists signed by a record company, again major or independent, go on to become commercially successful. It is a very competitive market, a fast-moving market. There is no recipe for success. You cannot do it by numbers. That's why that investment that the record companies make, they need to be able to recoup, and they need to have a fair chance of doing that. And of course, copyright is the bedrock for that. Come back to that later. We also mentioned that record companies, of course, sign artists, and this process begins there. Some people say that artists don't want to be signed by a record company anymore. In the age of YouTube, why can't they do it alone? So we ran 2 surveys, one you see there in the UK and one in Germany. And they found the same, that 3/4 roughly of unsigned artists wanted a record deal. And they wanted to sign to a major or an independent label to give their career a boost. And the next slide here that talks about the financial investment made by record companies to launch an artist in a major territory really underscore why they would want such a deal. And you think of the money there that goes in payment of an advance to help the artists give up their day job and concentrate on writing, rehearsing, performing their music. We spoke to many people in the labels who said that when they signed bands, they were doing day jobs. They were working in stores, they were working in restaurants, and they needed to be able to give that up to concentrate on their music. And as you know, perhaps, when you have a hotly contested artist or band, these advance payments can even go up beyond the figure there, the average figure. Recording. Some people say, well, again, you can record in your bedroom in this day and age. The technology is there. But to use the best session musicians, to work with the hottest producers, to get the final product you want, then the costs are still significant. Video production, more important than ever in the age of YouTube. And also tour support. Again, increasingly important to get the music out on the road. And record company support still needed in many cases to make that happen. And the lion's share, you see, promotion. Even in the digital age, promotion in offline and online is important. There's so many acts out there that you need to be able to cut through, and you can only do that with a significant promotional budget and with people that are used to promoting artists and taking them to a wider audience. The third area we mentioned is promoting consumer awareness of IP. And we do this in a couple of ways. One of our products is the Parents and Teachers Guide. We realized that children and young people knew more about the internet than their parents and teachers in many cases. And so parents and teachers could not talk to them about what's right and wrong online and about the importance of going to licensed services to get music. So we produced a guide that cut through the jargon and enabled them to ask the right questions of their children and young people. And that has been rolled out through our various national groups into 11 countries. It really signifies the importance, again, of tailoring and localizing things. It's obviously in 11 different languages as well. And you'll see with the next slide here, the digital file check that we produced, again, aimed at the family market. So much of the copyright infringement, casual copyright infringement, was happening on the family computer, where parents didn't really know what was going on. So we produced a simple tool, again available in several languages, and we hope to roll out in more, to help them realize what was on their computer in the first place, and to remove stuff that they did not want on there, file sharing programs and the like. And it was very important that we emphasized in the education campaigns around it that it didn't spy on people, it didn't wipe files that were legitimately there, and it did not tip us or any other anti-piracy authorities off. It was just a piece of software that we produced to help parents on the family computer. So if those are the three broad areas that we cover, there are also a few others. More generally, you can always find out what we're up to on the IFPI website, www.ifpi.org. We are also on Twitter, and we are constantly keeping people informed about what we're up to on there. And the next one is slightly unusual. We realized that we did an awful lot of work talking about copyright and talking about the license market, but we sometimes talk so much about the market, we forgot to talk about some of the magic of music. And so we therefore commissioned a video to show the role that music has played throughout the years, even though the technology has changed from vinyl through to streaming, that music is central to people's lives. Now I think that you're going to have to switch to YouTube so that you can watch this. It's only 1.5 minutes, so do bear with me. It was produced at the Abbey Road Studios in London, and with a young British rapper. So you may find perhaps that he goes a little fast for the translators. I wouldn't try translating him as you go along. It won't work. But hopefully at least you enjoy the music and catch the meaning of the lyrics.
What's the one thing that never gets old? Listen how the story unfolds. Yeah. Started way before I was born. They found a way to record all the times I performed, with a bass and a tom and a kick and a horn. That was right to you when it changed form. You finally had a voice, spoke a universal lingua. My dad loved you, he was involved. It was like you were the souls of a generation. The guitars and amps and record players.